Welcome to Exploring the Ozarks, where we tell the history and stories of location, places, and people that make up the Ozarks. Here's Matt!
There it is.
I turned it up for you.
Good. I noticed it was a little lackluster last week. I wanted more applause. Thank you, guys. You can all sit down now. Hey, everybody. I'm Matt Graham. Thanks for tuning in to Exploring the Ozarks. We're here today at Springfield Studio One Studios.
That's the
for
place.
This podcast.
Ken can talk about that because he's recorded stuff here.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
This is my favorite place now. My new favorite place in
Good.
Springfield.
I've had multiple people tell me, okay, one person, but multiple people is what I'm going to say, told me it passes the vibe check.
It does.
So I think that
when
means
I figured out
people
there's
should
like
come
5
by.
of you around here because when I'm around, I run into you everywhere.
There's doors that go into
I
other
think he's
rooms,
got like
and he just comes
5
out.
of them.
Yeah.
I hide my doppelgangers in closets.
Yes.
Just they come out as they're needed.
They have to grow their hair and beard just the same as him.
That's the crazy part.
That's hard.
Yeah,
it's tough.
it is hard.
But it's a place that a lot of people can come in and do events, and you have a theater, which we did a podcast and filmed it on that theater, which is
almost
actually
like a TV show. Honestly,
super
it was
awesome.
very well,
It's a
high
great
quality.
set. It's a great place.
very
to
good
do
set.
podcast.
And I've even talked to some bands lately that I've said, hey, go rent the space.
Yeah.
Once you see the space,
We had our first live music performance here, actually.
Who was that?
When we did the Sato 48 screening.
Yeah.
Genevieve. Oh, sorry. King Arthur's wife.
Guinevere.
Thank you. She's going to be so mad at me if she hears this.
Oh, that's actually her name.
I said it the wrong way, and she's like, no, it's Guinevere. I was like, okay. And she wasn't mad about it. She was very pleasant. Very pleasant person to work with anyway, but she had great music. It was all, classic country, and then some stuff she wrote herself.
Okay. And local
But it was
artist.
great, yeah.
Love
Local
it.
artist was part of Queen City Shout.
Good.
Gamuscio. I
Oh,
said his
man.
name right, too. He keeps teasing me about
Good
that.
job, actually, because you were struggling on the show that day. I
really
was listening
was.
to it. I'm like, man, it's Gamuscio. It's Gamuscio.
It is.
Super cool guy, but that Queen City Shout banner that's behind you. I think the event went really well, actually, from the turnout I was
From
seeing.
what I hear, yeah. We actually probably should have him come back or have him do a phone call for one of the podcasts and just kind of report on it.
We do
like
need that, actually, because
that'd
I'd
be
love to
good.
hear stats and check out how it went, because it's a week-long deal, so I'm glad that they were able to spread that love around. But but there's a lot you could do here. You can film your own podcast or do your own podcast. You can put on a small play. The Springfield Improv operates out of here as well.
Yes, they do. They
So
do
there's
classes and performances.
a lot of cool stuff going on. You can play some music, like we said, film your own little music video or whatever, which is what I proposed to my friends that just came out with the song on Spotify and all that. Or you just need a space to rent for an event, go ahead and get a hold of David over here at Springfield One Studios. Otherwise, let's talk a little bit about our sponsors and Patreon real quick. Let's get that out of the way because we got a lot to talk to.
We
with
do,
Ken
and
Colman
we have
here.
less time than usual today.
Yeah, I know.
So, Patreon real quick. If you want to support us as an individual, not as a business, we have Patreon, which is $5, $10, $25 tiers. We have a couple Patrons, Terry Carr and Jay Carr.
Oh,
yes, there's relation.
got Dad there, yeah.
But
Got 'em both.
my brother, older
good.
brother.
Oh, what a good brother.
Yeah, very nice of him. Yeah, he actually inspired some of this stuff because he
Dude,
streamed for a long time.
Hold on, I've got 2 brothers, so we're gonna have to call them and tell them they've got to get on this.
You do, yeah.
if they're listening,
Be like, hey guys,
Yeah.
David's family supporting him.
Yes, and a
why aren't you
sister, too.
supporting me? I got 3 sisters. I should go and be like, hey guys.
All right, see, this is where great things start, though. So, but yes,
better yet, we have several hundred people that follow us right now in our group and on Facebook, and we have thousands of people. Like I think the last one that we did with Jeff Houghton we're close to 2,000 views.
Good.
So if you are one of those viewers and you want to support and hear more stories like this and a lot of cool stories Ken's going to tell us today, please go on Patreon and you get. Not only do you support us, but you get shout-outs like what we just did, as well as access to exclusive content.
Yeah, some merch coming up soon. We
And
got our
some
shirts
merch.
almost done.
Yep. So,
but it's one of those ways to get connected to a show that you're learning a lot from, I hope.
Yep.
And maybe you pull some other things out of it as well. Today, you're about to pull a lot of things out.
yes.
Of things you might not have known. I'm just going to skip the rest of that BS. Let's get through this because we only have like 30 minutes with Ken. Ken Colman, good friend of mine. Thank you for being here.
Matt Graham, good to see you.
Man,
David Carr, good to see you.
Yeah, always. I just barely met Ken. I think this a couple months ago.
Yeah,
now,
that's
where
right.
We started to
But
really
now
get
you've
to know
known me
each
a
other.
lifetime, haven't you?
It feels like it. I mean, not only because you talk a lot. No, I'm just joking.
No.
Ken is just a great guy. He's really easy to get along with to talk to. So yeah, it feels like I've known you for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as people that I know, that are connected in this area, I've known so many people my whole life. And I think Ken Colman, people make fun of me because everywhere I go, I know somebody, even on vacations and wherever else. But I bet Ken Colman is probably worse than I am. Am I right about that, Michelle? Does he know everybody?
Worst would be the correct word.
We're going to reference the girlfriend off screen.
When you're referring to me, worst is the right word to use.
Yeah, if you're in town or Branson.
Here's what we're going to use. Ready?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow. You isolated it. Very
I
good.
did.
Awesome.
Yeah.
My voice is a little worse today because this respiratory infection. So I think I can do
I'm just
it better
going to use
next
it
time.
like all the time.
All right, good.
Oh, yeah.
You should
sorry.
use it as your ringtone or something.
Oh, and better yet, I just have to show you this.
And for $5, we'll
Ready?
sell it to you. Oh, Jesus Lord. Oh, God. Is that in case I cuss or something?
It actually cuts you out completely, actually.
I noticed that.
That's kind of annoying, actually.
It really is.
We don't do that.
I don't
button
plan
again.
on using it at all, except for jokes. Like maybe, your middle's talking, I'll be like, I can't hear you.
Oh, no, let's not do that.
Oh, we
that's
do
like
have that. The rim
crickets,
shot,
though.
yeah.
But anyway,
That rim
there,
shot.
that's it. So
We'll leave that.
well, hopefully with Ken, these are some serious stories, but I
With
bet there's
Ken,
some funny
we'll have to
ones,
use this one quite a bit.
but- Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
nice.
this
Tell the
takes
story.
you, this
Yeah, tell
takes
the
you
story.
back, right, to growing up in Branson West. I'm not going to give away your whole story. I'm going to let you talk about it, which we're going to talk about a lot of things, I'm sure.
Yeah. Because
but-
Ken has a lot of cool stories growing up around there.
I mean,
around the lake.
Yeah, and you're talking about a guy who lived there his entire life,
Yeah.
and sold real estate too. So not just growing up somewhere, but you're really attached to the growth of an area.
Mm-hmm.
And Branson has seen this resurgence in the last few years, but you were there during kind of, I want to say, dare I say, the Renaissance era of Branson, because that was when the first balloon happened, was when you were around, and it's probably mostly your fault. But great, you did
In a
that.
good way.
In a
In a
great
good way.
way. In a great way. I've spent so many hours and days in
You can
Branson.
tell Matt and I know each other very well.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And I mean,
yeah.
I own property in Branson and stuff, so I
Yeah.
love Branson. I really do. And it's become this better
Well,
portion
and
of Branson lately.
I feel like we
you know?
have to invite Ken back like 2 or 3 times for like a
Yeah.
continual podcast because we're going to focus today on like growing up part.
We
Right.
But then we could go
cover a lot of stories.
If we went to the real estate and then also what he's doing now, I mean, those are like all separate things.
Right.
So we're going to be focused on
Well, and that's
just the growing up
kind of
and
where I was
those
headed
stories.
was growing up in a place like that just sees this extraordinary growth. I grew up in Nixa.
Yeah.
You were from Ozark. We watched it grow
Yay,
up so
Ozark.
much.
Sorry.
We watched it grow up so fast that we were just mind boggled by this, right? And which
wait,
is a
wait,
good
Matt,
reason why we
sorry.
know so many people too.
I just realized I could say this. Ozark is the best.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no. You can't use my voice against me
I just did.
with Ozark. Oh man. But so growing up in that era, you're just kind of watching all this stuff happen around you and things
Yeah.
happen, but you're growing up in a place that becomes one of the entertainment capitals of the world. You grew up down the road from where Silver Dollar City is, and that's in itself its own.
That
When they
thing's
say
huge
city,
now.
it's a huge area
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
So
it is
tell
big.
us, what is it like growing up in a place like that? Share some of your experiences with us. Let's
So
start.
I grew up down at the end of Indian Point, down on the actual Indian Arrowhead area, in
Right.
the heart of it.
It's a nice
actually.
area, yeah.
Yeah, it
Beautiful.
was a little resort that now it's called Hunter's Resort, but it was called Coleman's Resort at the time. My father and I built it.
What was it called at the
It
time?
used to be called Coleman's Resort.
Coleman's Resort.
How
Makes
original,
sense.
huh?
Ah,
Well,
And it was right across from the
Ken
campground.
Colman.
branding.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was. And so I can find my way home, I think.
Do you guys still, like, part of your family own that at all, or has it been sold?
It's been sold since when I
Yeah.
got out of high school, and I could no longer help the family run it. It was kind of like a farm. Dad said, you know what, I don't want to do
yeah.
all this myself.
Oh,
And
yeah.
So he sold it and went into real estate, and then I followed in his footsteps later. But
Oh,
I
man.
grew up in the resort. I was a resort brat, as they
Yeah.
called us down there at the lake.
Was it really a resort though at the time? I mean, what kind of resort? Because
it was
now
actually
that
just a-
Indian resort is huge.
Yeah, it was just a bare piece of real estate whenever we first built the resort on it. And, it was not a huge motel resort. It was a motel type resort.
Okay.
And it was a fishing resort, and it had a pool, and it had a gas station, and had an ice cream store, and at times I ran them all
Oh my gosh.
and cleaned the
Yeah.
septic system and everything. I mean, whatever you had to do.
Oh, fine.
But you were born into a business, basically.
I pretty much
you
was.
know?
Yeah, I mean, I was truly a tourism, service oriented guy. I was the guy that when you pull in to get gas station at the gas station to get gas, I would come up and say, "Hey, can I help you?"
Just like that,
and they get a big grin on their face.
Were
like,
you just
"Oh."
trying to sell it that you
Yeah,
were a
I was.
redneck
Yeah,
hillbilly?
Totally was.
Man, you were an entertainer then as
Oh,
well.
yeah,
right.
yeah, well.
Okay.
Entertainer,
You were warming
salesman,
everybody
yeah.
up for Silver Dollar City's
yeah,
existence.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I got into it. It was fun. I
That's
could
awesome.
tell a whole book on just that filling station.
I can only imagine, man.
I'm
believe
telling
it.
you.
Because they were few and far between.
Yeah, they were.
in that
I was
area.
there during the time that gas rates went really high, and it killed the tourism for the area.
Right.
And you couldn't get gasoline. There was a shortage of gasoline.
Right.
So
What year was that?
Oh,
83 or
70s,
something?
wasn't it?
yeah, about 80. No. It was 72.
Okay.
I was gonna say,
Oh,
yeah,
gosh, way
that
before.
was the gas shortage from the Iran thing. all that,
Iran,
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, but it was a great place. It was. It was a beautiful place to grow up. I mean, I had the lake right there. I could go fishing. I could go swimming. I could go water skiing.
Oh,
I'm only slightly jealous. Okay, I'm really
Yeah,
jealous.
and I had my parents had a pool, and I got up and I got up at 6 o'clock and I worked till 3 o'clock. And when I got off at 3 o'clock, I could go play.
Heck yeah.
And I got a paycheck.
Hey. Your
that
parents
was
knew
nice
what to do.
Yeah,
that was smart,
nice.
actually.
Yeah.
I pay my kids for stuff too, but I wish I could
growing
make
up
them do
that
the
happened
hard
as well,
stuff. You know? But so when did the dam become? When did Springfield or Table Rock Lake become Table Rock Lake? Wasn't it?
In 1957.
57.
The
Okay,
year I was
thinking
born. In
early
fact.
60. Wow.
Ironically, yeah.
So you grew up with the lake,
literally.
literally.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah, it was actually, I'll tell you, just a quick story, because I'm all about stories.
I love the history of that place,
So the
too.
reason why the Table Rock Dam got built was the Hershings family, who built Silver Dollar City, thought that it would be great if they could have more people come to their theme park. So they actually got the idea to go to the Corps of Engineers and said, hey, you know what? If we could actually build a lake here, then, it would be a great thing, and would bring people here to camp and do all that stuff. So it was actually
they
the
built it
Hershings
for
that pushed for it to
tourism?
be built.
Yeah.
Or did the Corps have another reason
Well,
beyond just tourism?
There's a backup plan there.
There was a
That's
backup plan.
That's our generators
Sure.
for electricity.
Yeah,
and
it
it's
was-
Right, yeah.
a lot of things.
There's
wouldn't have
multiple
happened
reasons
without
The
that.
for it,
Hershings
yeah.
probably sold all of that idea to them.
Of course.
As we're going to use this as a resource. It's a backup water system.
Which
too.
is what it is. Yeah, it's all those things and more.
But it's also the confluence of a lot of big rivers too. Flat Creek, James River, White River, all those rivers come together, not to mention all the other springs. They all
Interesting.
come together right there on the White
Branson
River.
wouldn't be Branson today without it, because it constantly flooded.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
Couldn't have existed.
Right.
Really? Huh.
And the Hershings
See, I'm
founded.
learning a lot here because
Well,
I knew
yeah.
I've been to Branson, I've been to Table Rock Lake, not as much as you guys, but
Well, you got to think.
there's a lot of things I don't know about it.
It
so it's
came
kinda
from
cool.
a cave, man. Like
Yeah.
one cave.
It came from one cave.
Marble Cave down at Silver Dollar City.
Really?
They still do the tour today, which is super awesome, actually. It's one of the coolest caves I've ever seen, and I've been in a lot of caves.
Yeah.
And it is just awe-inspiring.
It's a great place to go in
right?
the
That
summer.
is
when
so
it's
cool.
And they
I'm going to have
sold-
to go and check that. I'm
they
taking my
sold-
daughter down there and check it out.
Do
yeah.
it. Even if you just go to the Silver Dollar City for that, it's
Yeah.
worth it to me.
Because I'm just used to seeing the lake, so I mean I go down there. I took my drone down there. I've been to Indian Point actually doing photos and stuff down there for different real estate things.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just
pretty.
see this huge lake that just stretches everywhere, and to think that it just used to be a river.
Well, just think
Couple
there used,
of rivers.
there used
It's
to
like-
be little small towns at the bottom of that thing too. So
That must be fun for diving for people that go down there.
yeah,
I mean,
I think it's a lot of trees and things like that, but you can still find some of the old cemeteries and houses. I think that if they're still standing, anyways.
Interesting.
But yeah,
it's there. Divers can still see some remains and
Yeah,
stuff.
it's
There's
neat.
actually small cemeteries down there too.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
neat, man.
That's cool.
There's some books out about it you ought to see, because whenever Johnny Morris started, which we'll get into that too, but Johnny Morris has a natural history museum down there as well that he started
at the bottom of the lake.
well, it's at
You have to dive down to
it's
it.
down at Big Cedar. Basically, it's a big museum that you just started. You walk in and there's this huge mastodon
it's amazing.
standing there.
That's
But
really
a lot of
cool.
the artifacts he got were from when they blew out for the dam, where
Mm-hmm.
the confluence supposed to be, where they actually would release the water. They found tons of Indian artifacts right there, and
Wow.
he collected a lot of those, or bought them from a collector when the guy
Sounds like we need to get
collected
that
them.
museum director up here and have him talk about things.
Sounds like we need to go visit it or something. We
That'd
can at
be
least go
fun.
visit.
You
But,
guys
cool.
should. I mean, he's quite a historian, as you well know.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's probably done more as bringing historic things to the Ozarks than anybody.
Absolutely, we'd love to have
yeah.
him on the show sometime, Ken. So just let us know. But
Yeah.
but and I respect
Love it.
that a lot, because we do have so much history in this area that
Yes. Yeah.
just the Natural History Museum on the south side over by River Cut's really cool. But I've heard this one Johnny put together is just amazing. But his conservation efforts are amazing, and everything he does goes into his nonprofit for his conservation. So so before we get to that. What's some of your favorite memories of being at Indian Point, other than your parents making you work all the time?
Oh, it was every day was a great new day. Every day I couldn't wait for my feet to hit the ground, and I got to experience such cool things. My routine day was a great day. I would wake up in the morning and I worked at the resort, but I had a mini bike. I had one of those little bitty mini bikes.
Yeah.
And so I rode all over Indian Point on that mini bike, and I would meet everybody, and I would mow their lawns, and I would help the old lady move the boxes from the garage into the attic, and I was the good doer.
Were you in school or were you homeschooled?
No, I was in school,
Okay.
that was a whole nother education. Riding the school bus from Indian Point over to Reed Spring
Oh, wow.
and back home.
Yeah, that's like 40
Yeah, I mean, it was-
minutes or something like that.
Yeah, then there was another education that was a drive from here to Springfield. Or from there to Springfield
To
through Nixa.
town.
Yeah, you went to the big city of Nixa.
Went to town.
Or Ozarks.
Big city in
one of the two.
Nixa.
Yeah. Or Springfield, if you really got lucky, I bet.
Oh yeah. Well, if you got to Springfield, you were in big town.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, that was. I mean, it was a great place to grow up. Indian Point it's still a town of its own, and it's just continued to grow. And a lot of neat people down there. But so many of those people on Indian Point are people who own resorts, and many of them are from people from Iowa that sold their farms. They saw, thought, what a life. I could come down here and own a resort, run a resort.
I'm saying after being on a farm, that probably doesn't feel too...
That's not too bad of a life.
Probably easier
Yeah,
than...
that's
Well,
not too bad.
the irony of it is that 90% of them, because I sold them later, their resorts, and they would say it's harder to run a resort than it is to run a farm.
Oh, interesting. Is that because of all the people?
Well, they get
It's easier to deal with animals than
I
with
would
people.
think.
You think, well, I'm going to be down at the lake where I can have fun.
Right.
But
you're
what they
working.
overlook is you work the whole time.
No, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
So it's like it kind of takes away from the fun.
That makes sense.
Especially
That
if you
makes
have a
sense.
campground and all that kind of stuff and cabins and all that, trying to keep it clean.
And if you don't want to, even if you get a whole bunch of employees to help you manage it, then you have to manage the employees.
Usually there's hardly any employees at any resort I've ever been to. Usually there's
just-
2 or 3 people. It's usually a mom and pop.
family.
And
Cuts
it's
into
a
your
family
costs.
doing it.
Yep, cuts into your costs if you do
Some
that.
people can get there to work,
Yes.
This was back in the day when Branson used to bring their entertainers over to the Indian Point, and they would ask you to come to the shows, and you could go for free. And the Presleys would come over, and the Ball Knobbers and all of them would come and visit with you at the resort pre-season, about this time of the year.
Is that just to solicit people, to try to get to know people, get them to come to the show? So that's old school sales they were doing, too. I didn't even know that.
I kind of wish they'd go back to it, but it's probably difficult for them to do now. But back in those days, that's what you did. You came over, and they would try to get you to come and see the shows.
Yeah.
And so, either mom and dad would break away, and I ran the resort, or I would break away and go see it. But we'd go see it, and then that became who we'd recommend. Because once you saw the show, you get caught up in it.
Then you get a pamphlet to keep in there. And
Exactly right.
Well, and that's why they had the shows at your place, too, so you could recommend everybody.
That's right.
Super cool.
Smart.
And there's some good families in all of that bunch, too. The Bald Knobbers, I grew up with the Mabes and stuff. All great people,
Great people. And that was so much fun to get to visit with them there at the resort pre-season, before the season actually hit.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're
We'd
all
find out. The first time I met the
nowadays.
Presleys, I said, are you related to Elvis Presley? And they said, yeah, actually, we kind of are.
I've wondered that.
Yeah, they said we kind of are. It's a cousin, but they said we're not.
And they're just so happen to be musically inclined as well.
They just have. Oh yeah.
I think with the name Presley, you kind of have to go into
That's
music.
kind of cool, though. I didn't know
Don't
that.
you?
I've always wondered that growing up here, though, and I never ventured to ask anybody. So thanks for volunteering that. We all learned something new today.
Well, they're really a big core as the reason that Branson grew. No question. There's a lot of people say, "Why did Branson grow like it did?" Well, there's a lot of things that created that. As so the Hershins were a big factor. The dam was a huge factor.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little ditty that's kind of interesting. If you look at the landmass of Taney County, and there's very few people that know this, but about 25% of all the landmass in Taney County is owned by White River Electric.
Huh.
It's because it's the leases coming off the dam in order to run the power.
You're right about
Interesting.
that. It's got to spread all far and wide.
So what I did is I took a big map and put it on the wall, and I color-coded all of Taney County as to what White River owned. Now, here's another interesting fact. 25% more of it is owned by a little college called College of the Ozarks.
Yeah, I've heard College of the Ozarks is one of the biggest landowners in the world. Am I right?
Yeah. They're like the second largest endowment university in the United States. To Harvard owns it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very wealthy little university.
I did not realize
So when
that.
you're looking at the power of the Ozarks,
Dang.
and you're looking at where the influence comes from, greatly comes from that little university.
And the Hershins had a lot to do with that as well, right? By donating land to them and their endowment fund and all that.
What's
kind of
interesting, a lot
stuff.
of people don't know, is the land that Hershins sit on is owned by College of the Ozarks.
Right.
Huh.
The Silver
Right.
City.
I've also heard that Battlefield Mall also sits on land that was donated to them, or on a 99-year lease, I want to say.
They
or
have
something.
a lot of land. And so, consequently, when you're looking at the dynamics and the influence and the politics of the area, so, anytime whoever's the largest landowner of any market is obviously politically carries a lot of clout.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's 50% of the land mass. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Another 25% is owned by Mark Twain National Forest.
Okay.
So think about that a minute.
Yeah.
75% of the land mass will never be developed, never change in Taney County.
Unreal.
That only leaves 25%.
That makes
That's
it
not
great
true
for
of most
resorts.
counties.
Right, and unless College of the Ozarks expands, which they're pretty consolidated into what they need to be.
And they're not likely to because
Right.
they're so wealthy that the land is just one of the best investments you can make in America today is land.
Oh,
So it's in Taney County. So
Yes.
they don't really need the money.
ever growing though.
Yeah, they have plenty of cash flow to pay for their students, so they really don't need the cash. So when
Right.
people now you're hearing my sales pitch for years and years of selling real estate. And
I love
why you
hearing
need to buy
your
real
sales-
estate.
Well, because
That's why you want to own that condo,
right.
Matt. That's-
Yeah. No, I like, and I own like space in the air,
Yeah,
not like on
that's-
the ground
that's right.
either, right?
That's right.
So it's like you take this little chunk of ground and now you've multiplied it multiple times. But to hear the progression of from when you're a kid to growing up in high school and watching everything grow. What was your biggest influence growing up? Was it your parents? Was it the people that you surrounded yourself with, or what?
That's a great question. And I'm going to give that answer. the reality is when you're a young man growing up, or young boy or girl growing up in Stone or Taney County, and it's pretty true of most of the Ozarks, but especially Stone and Taney County, every single homeowner is a grandma or grandpa to you.
Yeah. You're right about that.
Makes
I
sense.
called mom to a lot of people. Yeah.
So when I look at my influencers, I would say it was the Ozarks as a whole. I can't tell you how many times I'd sit on a front porch swing with Walter,
Right.
and Walter would share with me his wisdom.
Yeah, like your best friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you're 10 years apart, 20 years apart.
And here I am, a little kid, my feet are dangling off the swing as we swing, and I'm listening to Walter's wisdom.
I love that.
That just reminds me of the story you told me about finding that mine at one point. Was that one of the things that Walter told you to go find? Or?
Gosh.
Actually, it was another old man.
Right, yeah.
Ray, which is the guy we bought the land from to build the resort. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you a quick little story about Walter. Walter and I were sitting and swinging on the swing one day, and I looked over and I said, Walter, what's that gold watch that's there right as you go into the screen door of your house? And he said, well, Ken, he goes, that's to remind me. And I said, remind you of what? He said, well, when I retired as a railroad captain up in Chicago, they gave me the gold watch after 28 years of working for the railroad.
Right.
And I said, okay. And he said, well, the day that I moved in to the house here, he said, when I retired, I moved down to Branson, Springfield, or down to Indian Point. And he said, I bought this little place. He said, the very first thing I did when I got out of the vehicle was took that gold watch and put it up there on the wall and drove a 16-penny nail right to the middle of it. And I, here I am. I'm sitting there.
That's it for me.
I'm 9 years old looking at him thinking, really? And I said, why would you take a perfectly good watch and run a 16-penny nail through it? And he said, and this teaches us a lot of the philosophy of the people who retired in the area. He looked at me and he said, Ken, it's to remind me that I don't want to know what time it is. I don't want to know what's going on in the rest of the world. I don't want to know what's going on in the news.
Right.
He said, I've been there, done it. I'm at a retirement age now, and I can't change anything. He said, so I just want to enjoy life.
And that's like everybody's mantra that
Yeah.
goes to the lake, right? That's why you go there.
Lake life.
Is to turn it off. You don't want to know what time it is, even though that's a habit for us. But you got to know when to eat. And
For
if you
many
have
of us,
kids
it's
and all
heaven on
that,
earth.
but-
I mean, it's
Yeah,
the
it
lake
is.
life in the Midwest. Those understand. People on the East and West Coast have the ocean, but in the Midwest, it's the lakes.
Yeah, but I'm scared of the
Yeah.
ocean. I don't like the ocean.
Sharks are in that.
Especially
Shark-
after
I
some
saw-
of the things that you experience in the ocean, jellyfish.
I saw sharks this time, and I was like, "Yep, see,
Yeah, I'm done.
had to get my daughter out of the water." I'm like, not doing it. I'm just not doing it.
But you're a lake guy, so
I am a lake guy. I'm a river guy too, and all these rivers flow
Rivers
into
are
that
fun.
lake. But I've floated in canoes on that lake for nighttime floats and stuff with the James River Water Basin Partnership, and it was amazing to do it at night. Except some people on boats at nighttime probably shouldn't be driving them at nighttime, but it was still a great way to see the lake,
Sure.
and all these things that you've been around it so much that you're writing a book, and it's called Legends of Table Rock Lake, correct?
Correct.
So how many chapters are we talking? Because each one of those is a separate story in itself.
Each one of them is a story, and I think there's 28 chapters total. I think I have another 30 some odd chapters to do a sequel book to it.
Sure.
Even
already.
better.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you where those stories. The reason I had them so well versed in my mind, because as you sell real estate on Table Rock Lake, when you go show a piece of property, it's a 30-minute drive to a destination to go look at a house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
here
I
you
feel like
have
that
this
sums
people
up
in your car,
the Ozarks in general.
and so
Long
you've got to
drives.
entertain these people.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it gets pretty boring, just driving
This is
along.
On those windy
before,
roads.
back before
So-
cell phones, and you couldn't be. Even nowadays, though, you can't get reception, right?
Some parts.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were stuck with me in the car for 30 minutes. So, and that was just getting there. And then there was 30 minutes coming back. And then there's the 30 minutes while you're looking at the house.
Right.
So I had to entertain them with stories about the Ozarks. And so I told those stories of growing up over and over and over again to where
You got
they're
really
second nature for me
good.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing, actually, because you practiced these then.
Yeah,
It's
yep.
not just a one-off. You remember these because you've told them so many times. So tell us a story real quick.
Okay, let's see, guys.
I mean,
there's so
which
many.
one? I'm looking at your Facebook page right now that's called Legends
Well, okay,
of
there
Table
was one.
Rock.
There was one that comes to mind. It was a buddy of mine, Mike Mueller, who's no longer with us, but he grew up on Indian Point as well. And both of us decided one day that we'd ride our motorcycles, our mini bikes, so far back into the woods, which is now Stonebridge down there. We parked our mini bikes and we got along the railroad tracks. We started walking along the railroad tracks, and we walked down to the tunnel. There's the largest tunnel in the country, which
Yeah.
is right there in Stone County. Most people don't know that.
Right.
That's where they cut the railroad track through the mountaintop.
Oh, man.
And so we decided we was going to walk that. So we got about
Is
half.
it still in use?
Oh,
Oh my
yes.
God. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So we got about halfway through it, and we were going to Pop's Dairy Dale. You know where Pop's
I
Dairy
love
Dale?
Pops.
So we were going over to get an ice cream cone, eat a cheeseburger. at
And you
Pop's
guys are
Dairy
riding
Dale.
your mini bikes, or are you walking
No,
at this
now
point?
we're walking.
Okay.
Yeah, now we got off the mini bikes to get on the railroad track because it was a rough ride on the on the mini bike.
Sure. Oh yeah.
So because their tires are a little bitty.
Yeah.
And so off we're walking, got sticks, and we look like right off of Mayberry RFD. And so we're walking down through there, and we get about halfway through, and Mike thinks it'll be really funny to just yell out real loud and scream. Well, he does, and all the bats cut loose.
Oh gosh.
We didn't know there was bats in there. So these bats just flock us,
Oh my gosh.
Well, and so there's just full of noise going on at the same time.
yeah.
And about the time the noise cuts down, all of a sudden we hear this,
Oh, jeez.
One on top of the other.
and we're halfway through this like mile-long tunnel.
Oh, jeez.
So, and it's dark in there, so the train's not going to see us.
No.
And there's no room.
And there's
to
no
hide.
room, right?
Yeah,
It's a tight fit for the train itself.
gosh.
So we're on the dead run.
Which way?
I can't tell you the
In
rest
or
of this
out?
because you have to read the book to find out.
Oh. God, that was a heck of a cliffhanger there. But there's
I feel
also
like we need to
things
have
that,
Ken make some exclusive content for Patreon. Be like, hey, here's some stuff. Go to Patreon.
I think we do. I mean, some good cliffhangers, but I mean, you've got some really good stories in there about just the normal stuff that people did like that. I mean, who
I feel like I have
hasn't
to ask if you died, but
No, he's still here. Thank God.
Are you a ghost?
Part of me did that day. But
Well, you learned a lot that day.
I lost some
I
things
kind
that
of really
day,
want
too.
to ask about, because I know Matt has some other things too,
Oh,
but I've
yeah.
always heard about you being a really great sailor. Like you had this big boat and you would sail around the lake and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah. Well, it was
Was
always
that something you did as a kid, or was
I
it
grew
more
up
of like
on the
an
lake. When I was a
adult,
kid,
or-
I would park boats down at Indian Point Boat Dock, and
Oh.
I would learn to. And some people would show up, and these city slickers would show up and didn't know how to park a boat in the water.
Oh,
Yeah,
They couldn't back one up. So at 14 years old, I would go down there for $10 a pop, and I would park their boat for them.
Smart.
I made good money doing that.
Yeah.
I could just stand there all day and park their boats for them.
You could probably still do that. till
and,
this
that just-
day,
and there's a
actually.
whole story
Yeah.
about that in the book about a guy who's didn't get his parked right.
Okay.
It's a really good story. But anyway,
There's more of it.
Yeah. So I would park, and then I would park houseboats. I learned to park houseboats.
Oh, wow.
That's a whole other
Yeah.
issue. Yeah.
That's impressive.
So I thought someday I want to own a really big houseboat. Well, at one point, I owned the largest houseboat on Table Rock Lake. It was 100 foot by 20 foot wide. It was called Serenity, and it was when I had a major client that was coming to town. I would actually invite him out on the houseboat. We'd go park in front of the dam. We'd make steaks out on the grill.
Wow.
And I mean, if you really want to get somebody to buy into the Ozarks,
That would be the
That's
way
it.
to do it.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think I was 100 for 100. Anytime I took somebody out there, they bought.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was a great. Yeah. So that was the.
That's
houseboat.
really cool.
That's
Yeah.
a houseboat story.
I kind of imagined in my mind it was like a sailing ship, like a big
Oh,
pirate
yeah.
ship sort
No,
of thing.
no,
not
no,
that
no.
enormous.
Sailing
This is-
around.
This is a
Luxury,
hillbilly.
buddy. Yeah, this. Yeah,
Hillbillies don't sail.
there's not always
It was
wind.
just in my mind that way.
Yeah,
That'd
Table
been
Rock's
really
not
cool, though.
that windy. Actually,
No,
you don't
yeah.
see too many of
A block
sailboats.
That
on the
makes it
water
even-
is as good as it gets.
Yeah.
That makes
Yes.
it an even better lake, though. You have to
Hell
worry about all
yeah.
that wind all the time.
There's a lot of guys that didn't know how to do sailboats on the lake. I was not
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah, it's a pretty dangerous event.
The
to try
houseboat
that.
thing is still really cool. I mean, that does
Okay,
sound like a
all
lot
right.
of fun.
It
It
was a
is.
sail. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, I was actually one night I was sitting out there on the lake and in this huge boat, and it was late night and the wind picked up and I was swimming next to the boat.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you, when wind picks up and you're not in the boat,
Get in the boat.
you can't swim fast enough
Yeah.
to catch the boat, and that's not a pretty story.
No, but I can only imagine because I've gotten in the lake from a pontoon boat or something to that effect, and it's amazing how many trees are still in the water.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, last year alone, water was down just a little bit, but you don't realize it. And I was way up in this cove, and I still had a ways to go. And I'm
When you
thinking,
say trees, you mean ones that are still like
trees
in
that
the
are
ground and
old
looking
trees
up,
that
or
are
Oh,
in the
sure,
ground and they're standing straight up like they were
Really?
the day that they flooded that place. But now they're just dead and they're just sitting there.
Sure,
and there's
yeah. But they're
millions
still-
of them.
Yeah.
But I go to jump in because I usually test it before I let my kids jump in, which is always a good rule of thumb. And I jumped in, and I had one come up all the way to like my thigh when I jumped in. So I knew it was pretty shallow at
You got
the
to be careful
moment.
because the lake levels they'll fluctuate.
Not very, yeah.
So
and
you'll
it doesn't
go out
take
one
much.
year and jump off of a bluff.
Yeah.
And one time I jumped off of a bluff they call them the bluffs.
Yeah. I love that place.
So I pulled up there one time with Mike Mueller, same guy that did the. So Mike and I were like Mutt and Jeff, but anyway, we water skied all day long. Got there to the bluffs, and there was this big swing.
Yeah.
And so we were right out of high school, and we were a full sized, heavy duty guys.
Right. And you're not afraid of anything either.
The swing broke as soon as we got on it. So we felt bad. There was a bunch of people there. So Mike and I looked at each other and we thought, we'll climb up the top of the bluff. We'll retie the rope. We'll be the good guys.
Great idea.
We took a brand new ski rope up with us. I felt bad. We got up there and we thought, we saw snakes all along the way and thought, this is not going to be really cool to climb back down. So we thought, we'll just jump off. Well, what was the lowest levels the lake had ever been?
Oh my gosh! It's a pretty deep spot, though, too.
It's a deep spot, but let me tell you,
this is a good place for a cliffhanger.
Yeah. Oh no! Is this one isn't in the book? Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
oh gosh,
I that day I broke my back and dislocated 2 hips because I went off the very top, and he climbed down farther.
Oh my gosh!
They took me to the hospital, and I don't know if that's in the book or not. Might be, but
you can tell that story again, though.
I was an extreme guy growing up on Table Rock. I mean, I water skied, I competition water skied. Anything that you could think of to do. If somebody said, well, Ken, I dare you, I was that guy.
Right.
So it definitely makes for interesting stories.
Well, and that's kind of a cliffhanger for another subject that we're going to save for another day for your focus on the 5, which if you could give us a general synopsis of it really quick to jump from
we got 5 minutes
Legend of Label Rock, but I still want to give you some of your accolades and things because you've done some really cool things, Ken, and I think you're really humble about it. Like, there wouldn't be an airport in Branson if it weren't for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a huge thing in itself for tourism, for artists, for anybody who plays in bands that travels a lot and stuff like that. That's huge for the area.
Yeah, it wasn't entirely a non-selfish reason, although I didn't take a penny for helping getting it built. I did
Which
it
is
because
also unreal, by the way.
Yeah, I did it because it was my opportunity to give back to the community, to have our own airport.
Right.
And so when they came to me, I was the last leg. Everybody had said no, can't get it done, and I said, you know what? There's no such thing as can't for me. But I prayed to God, and God actually gave me the answer, and so we managed to get the airport built. But Focused on the 5 was a book that was written based off of a kid growing up on Table Rock Lake, realizing that I was not average, and that I always took things as never say never, never say can't, never say it can't be done.
That's it.
So my attitude always was we just haven't figured it out yet.
Right.
It was always my attitude, still is to this day.
Yeah.
There's a way to do this. We just haven't figured it out
But
yet.
not everybody thinks that way, and that's the important part about it,
Yeah. And I started to realize that when you go start selling real estate and you have to meet with people from all over the world and they only have a certain period of time, a window to make a decision, then you have to figure out, and I wasn't a pressure salesperson. That was my nature. I didn't grow up that way.
But you have to make it extra non-pressurized.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so what I had to learn to do was actually get into their heads like a psychologist would.
Absolutely.
And I would ask them questions.
Get to know them like that, too.
And so I learned that there was a pattern that began to evolve.
Okay.
The nature of the way people make their choices in life.
Right.
And so when I began to see that pattern, I was fascinated by it. I thought, wow, this is pretty interesting.
Well, you were hyper-focused on ones. I mean, you got to the point where, like you're saying with people, where it was a small window of time. So you were hyper-focused on this, but then you also were able to break it down so quickly with this person's in that category. This part of the family's in that category.
That's exactly
this
right.
person over here is really the decision maker, even though they're the quiet one,
Yep.
And that's a hard thing for most people in sales to figure out because you go through all these trainings. I've been through hundreds of trainings and seen so many analyses of different personality types and taken so many of my own tests that they're different every single time. And I don't know if that's because I have different personalities or what, but we'll talk about that later. But I found that yours is the most consistent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yours is the most consistent when it comes to breaking that mindset down to be able to identify those people, which is probably the most important thing in sales because that's why they always talk about it in sales.
Well, you've been a person who I've gone to about the new book being written, focused on the True 5. And part of the reason I am asked because you're a grounded individual that has done it all the hard way. Mm-hmm. And so when you're, it's one thing to write a book because you are someone who likes to write and you've gone to a lot of education and but it's another thing to write a book from actual experiences in life.
Right.
So Focus on the 5 came from that. It came from actually having to exist and do it right the best way I knew how, with God as my lead, to learn how to help people make a choice in a short period of time, not push them to make that choice, but simply make them feel comfortable where they say, you know what, Ken, you really, you broke this down and you related to us personally. You asked the questions based on the personalities that we were, and we feel comfortable making this decision. And they became my friends. So I'm that's how I built friendships.
Yeah. And that's the most important thing in sales, though, because you can think about insurance guys have residuals. People in real estate don't. They have a lifelong relationship, and that's the residual of them coming back. And unless you really make it an experience right off the bat, you're doomed for them to never come back and never tell their friends. And I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
And unless somebody has a good experience, I know I'm not getting a referral. And maybe I messed something up. I got to apologize for it. You just never know. I mean, there's so many factors.
That's what I like about you guys' show, and I watch it all the time, and I'm really glad that you're doing it because you're truly giving something back to the Ozarks that's really needed, and that's the education on the Ozarks itself.
Yes.
That's making a commitment, and I know you guys don't get paid to do this. You do it because it's your opportunity to give back to the Ozarks, and you're offering your studios and you're offering your time, and I think that's fantastic, and I applaud you guys for doing it.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Well, you're a guest of the show no matter what, no matter when. We do need to have you come back because that went by way too fast, and we've got so many things to talk about. That's
fun talking to you guys.
Yeah, it is fun, and I love hearing stories because I grew up in Nixon. It's kind of boring, but growing up at the lake, it's like you say that
Ozark is cool to grow up in. I feel like I need to say that now.
I have a grandson going to school and say that's not true.
There it is. There we go.
They say it's the best place in the world. So.
Yes, it is, and we'll just have him tell David that. But otherwise, I get to tell him that every time I see him.
Well, I have two grandsons going to Ozark school too. So
oh no,
yeah,
wow.
sorry.
How's that going?
Oh, they're
are they in that?
But we can all just say
rivalry
that the lake life.
Did you hear about the gunshot deal that happened the other day at the high school?
The fake call-in, whatever it was.
Yeah, and they had shut down all the schools.
There were some kids that were kind of traumatized by that. I know some people that they didn't want to go to school yesterday.
Yeah, it was, it's amazing.
Super scary because my wife's a teacher and I worry about that kind of stuff all the time. And last night I actually was like, I'd feel more comfortable if you were carrying a gun, if they would allow you to. But that's a whole other thing we can get into. And I'd love to sometime. But Ken, so let's talk about how people can get a hold of you if they want to talk to you, if they want to book you for any guest hosts or any type of speaking engagements.
Yeah, sure.
I
have people that ask me all the time to come speak, and I love to go speak, especially around the Ozarks.
Oh, yeah.
And I can talk about a lot of different subjects. I've got 3 different books: Climb to the Top in Real Estate, Focus on the Five, and also the new one coming out, which is The Legend of Table Rock.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Love to talk
for all of those, actually, but the last one especially.
Yeah. I think we need to have you come back on for each one of those, to be honest with you, because Focus on the Five is a whole thing. That's
they're all Ozarks born. All of them are right here. It happened here in the Ozarks.
Yeah.
And,
that's what I like about everything that you do is you are trying to build the Ozarks up. You're really trying to bring in more people. You're really trying to build everything up.
Well, you've been doing it for 40 years.
Yeah.
And we're just trying to keep this thing going in Springfield and tell the history of this because we feel like it's been lost along the way. People see what they see. They see the mill and they think it's
there's
new
a lot of
sometimes.
Transplants too. Like I'm from the West Coast originally.
Right.
When I moved here when I was 12, so I've been here for a long time now. But that's becoming more and more of a thing.
Huge.
So it's important that not only people bring their own culture and their own perspectives in, but also that they understand what's going on around here and how to integrate
it's
into that.
It's easy to lose the flavor of an area like the Ozarks,
Yeah.
and the Ozarks, is very dear and near to me, as I know it is you guys. And there's just so many cool stories that actually educates people, especially the new people coming, as to the reason why the Ozarks is the way that it is.
Right.
And once they understand that, they get a better concept, a better idea of how to get along with their neighbors. There's a reason why everybody waves at each other in Branson.
And we've had some guests on the show that said they stayed here from moving here from like New York. Jess Bowman talked about it. Jess Bowman, Jess.
Sure.
Moved here from New York, stayed here because she saw people waving at her, on the road, and she was like, well, this just feels welcoming.
And that's real.
And that is real. I did it today 4 times waving to people. All right. So,
well, we got to wrap
it's not
up
dead.
Now,
and we do thank you so much, Ken. Come back
Appreciate
anytime. We're going to schedule again. You can talk to our producer over here, Mr. David Carr. Let's get you scheduled, and then we'll look forward to seeing you with your book, Legend of Table Rock Lake.
Yes, Table Rock.
Table Rock. And then we will also catch you with Focus on the Five and everything that you're doing we want to keep in touch with. So, again, thank you, Ken Colman, for being on the show and blessing us with your presence, sir.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
And everybody, keep exploring the Ozarks. Thanks again for listening to Exploring the Ozarks. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our social media channels to help us keep exploring the stories of the Ozarks. If you're looking for more ways to support our show, we have sponsorships for businesses and Patreon for individual supporters. Check the links in the description for more details. Thanks for your support, and keep exploring the Ozarks.